Hello and welcome to 10 a.m. to the point editorial discussion by Neva Yes. In this video, we are going to comprehensively discuss all the editorial articles of the Hindu newspaper on 21st June 2024. So let's move towards the front page of the Hindu. What we have today is one article for detailed discussion. This article is on electronic mobility. So UPSC in the past has asked a question specifically on e-mobility. So we'll discuss this article in detail. All the other articles, if you take the first article, this is on HOOCH tragedy in Tamil Nadu that took place yesterday. Then you have an article on the GST regime, which is completing 7 years in the end of June. So we'll discuss that. Then you have an article on the US-Saudi agreement. So unless the United States-Saudi agreement materializes and it has a significant impact on India, we don't have much of a relevance of it. So we'll just have a quick overview at present. Then you have an article on the coalition politics in India. And finally, we have a section called Notebook written by the journalist in the Hindu newspaper. So we'll have quick discussions of these 5 articles in the beginning. Then we will move to the detailed discussion of the final article. So let's see the first article. This article deals with the HOOCH tragedy that took place in Tamil Nadu, which is in Kallikuruchi region of North Tamil Nadu. So this is not the first time that a HOOCH tragedy is taking place in Tamil Nadu. It took place in 2023 as well. So the major culprit in both these accidents was industrial methanol. So UPSC in the 2024 prelims has asked a question about the PFAs. If you remember, there was a question on forever chemicals in the 2024 prelims question paper. Just like that, industrial methanol can also be asked, because this, just like PFA, is a very potent poison. So in small quantities, it can cause liver failure, blindness and death. So industrial methanol was diverted from the industries to the local brewing stations. Here the brand of the local arak is Moonshine. So to the local brewing stations, industrial methanol was being diverted and they used it for building arak. And when it was consumed, so this industrial methanol is just like alcohol. It is added to alcohol to increase its strength. So when it was consumed, people died. And very often it results in blindness. Sometimes it results in death as well. So it deals with a major governance question as well, because it deals with the question of whether alcohol should be banned or it should be regulated or it should be legalized. So if you take the case of California, they have legalized the use of cannabis. So they find it as a better alternative than banning. So this is a governance question. In India, if you take, there is something called the sin goods. Alcohol, tobacco, etc. is categorized as sin goods and they are taxed high. When the tax is kept high, it is supposed to be a measure for de-incentivization. But when the tax is kept high, people go to other alternatives like moonlight. As a result, there will be tragedies like this. So this opens up several governance questions as well. You can think about that, but on a whole, understand the case study and use it as per your discretion. Now coming to the second article, the second article is on GST regime, which is completing 7 years in 2024 June. So when it was introduced, the average revenue from a GST in a month was around 1 lakh crore. And now it is touching 2.1 lakh crore. It is from the data of the month of April, it is touching 2.1 lakh crore. So the average for a long time was around 1.68 lakh crore. Now it is coming to 2.1 lakh crore. So that means GST is on a positive path. It is growing. So if GST is growing, now it's the time for reforms, says the editorial. So GST reforms has been a long pending issue since its introduction for the last 7 years. When it was introduced, the major aim of the GST regime was simplification. But there are 5 slabs right now, and it is much more complicated because industrialists often complain about the e-way bill or be it the input tax credit or the 5 slabs under which different goods fall. So there is an impending need to simplify the tax structure, and the editorial says that the simplification process can take place now. Now, the second major reform that the editorial suggests is about the inclusion of items like electricity, petrol, and natural gas. So there are a few other items that are included from the GST regime. So one of the reforms would be the inclusion of these items into the fold, because when a manufacturer manufactures something, it goes through several cycles, say 1, 2, 3. In the first cycle, there will be input taxes. There will be taxes on the manufacturing goods. In the second cycle, the manufacturer will again pay taxes. In the third cycle, they will again pay taxes, and maybe they'll pay the final GST tax at the end. So the same item is being taxed twice or thrice. To avoid this, you have the input tax credit, where tax is being recredited to avoid double taxation. So when an item is excluded from the GST bracket, they are paying the double tax at present. So a reform by including these will reduce the input tax credit and thereby rationalize their prices as well. So that is the takeaway from this particular editorial. It's just a trend analysis and way ahead. We'll move to the third article. As I have said, it is about the US-Saudi agreement. And unless this materializes into a major agreement, we don't have much of a takeaway from it. But on the outset, let's see what it is about. It is about a strategic alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia. So since 1952, both these countries have been major partners. But there's a major issue that pertains to the relationship between US and Saudi Arabia. Because if you take the United States, they are the major partner of Israel. They veto the resolutions against Israel in United Nations Security Council, and they support Israel by recognizing Jerusalem, their capital and all. But when it comes to Saudi Arabia, they are on the other block. They are the champions of the Islamic world. So they were part of the Arab League that resisted Israel invasions in 1967. And now, since Saudi Arabia is becoming more and more closer to the US, they have to be silent on the current Gaza escalation. So in this particular agreement, this issue comes to the forefront as well. So United States will provide Saudi Arabia with state-of-the-art technology and security enhancement, because US is no more dependent on the Saudi for its oil supplies. So US will give them with state-of-the-art technology. In return, Saudi Arabia will accept Israel and have full diplomatic relations with them. Saudi will also stay away from China in the interest of the US. So we should wait and watch how this materializes, because in a multipolar world where US is becoming less and less prominent, how Saudi deals with it is a matter of concern. If this materializes, it will have a positive takeaway for India, because India is pushing for the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, in which both US and Saudi are partners. So this will help us to bypass Pakistan as a trade route, and it will help us to avoid the Suez Canal as a choking point. It will also increase security in the region, because US will be granting them with higher security apparatus, so that will control the terrorist insurgencies in the region. So that will also be helpful for India. So that's the perspective from this article. Let's move to the next article, which is on the political relationship between BJP and its ally parties. So this author was a regular columnist in the Hindu for a long time, and now he has written an article about a political analysis based on the BJP and its alliances. So he says that in 1996, when the Vajpayee government formed its government for just 13 days, the two parties that supported the Vajpayee government was Shiromani Akali Dal, one from Punjab, and Shiv Sena from the Maharashtra. These two parties supported them, but both these parties are in the ruins in the 2024 elections. If you take the Shiv Sena party got split, and it has two factions. One is the Uddhav Thackeray faction and the Eknath Shinde faction. And now when they are going to fight the assembly elections, their fates are unknown. If you take the Shiromani Akali Dal, they were the spokespersons of the farmers, but they were not consulted before the implementation of the farm bills in 2020. As a result, they lost their support in Punjab, and it paved the way for the Aam Aadmi Party in Punjab. So right now, Shiromani Akali Dal just won one seat out of all the seats in the 2024 elections. Same is the case with Biju Janata Dal in Odisha, YSRCP in Andhra Pradesh, or AADMK in Tamil Nadu. All these parties have had a very poor performance in the 2024 elections. So it says that the relationship between the major partner BJP is actually not working for all these regional parties. That's the idea behind this article. Now let's move to the final article in the quick overview section. This is written, as I said, by the journalist. It talks about her insights into the elections. So she talks about the idea of why predictions got wrong in the 2004 elections. Almost all the exit polls were wrong in the 2024 elections. She attributes this to the Bradley effect. So, Bradley effect is an incident that took place in 1982 Los Angeles elections, where Tom Bradley was an African American. So, he contested for the Democrats, and there was another candidate who was white and who contested for the Republicans. So, in every exit poll survey, Bradley was winning. But when the results came, the other candidate won. The reason was the whites or the white voters, when they were asked by the journalists, they said they are going to vote for Tom Bradley because that was a publicly accepted statement, more publicly accepted statement, but in fact they voted for the other person. So voters are not necessarily opening up their mind to journalists, says the author. The author also says that analysts who come up with predictions based on data is not better placed when comparison to journalists, because journalists can do a much more better analysis, or they can read between the lines. They can read from the silence of the voters, which data driven analysts cannot do. So that's the takeaway, or that's the perspective from this article. Let's move to the detailed discussion article of the day, which is on e-mobility. As you can see, there is a question by the UPSC in 2023 specifically on the electronic vehicles, and this will be an important topic for you from the environment perspective as it deals with energy transition. Now let's see the statistics related to the particular sector. If you take road transport, it causes 12% emissions as per the data of the International Energy Agency. So in the 2024 prelims paper, there was a question on what was the major source of emissions in India. And if you take that, the first one is energy, the second one is agriculture, and the third is road transport. And this is the data from the International Energy Agency. And among the road transport, 20% is from passenger cars. And even if freight vehicles like the big trucks, they account for 5% of the traffic, but they account for 34% of the emissions. So a policy direction in this front should deal with them because they account for 34% of the emissions. We have a policy called FAME, Faster Adoption to Manufacturing Electronic Vehicles, which was introduced in 2015. We had FAME 2.0 in the mid. Now we are coming up to FAME 3.0. This article is discussed in the context of FAME 3.0. The major aims of the FAME program was to generate electric vehicles and hybrids by subsidizing their retail sales. So their sales will be subsidized. That's the first move. Second, encouraging the manufacturing of components. So this is done through measures like production linked incentive and Make in India initiatives. So manufacturing components will be encouraged. Second, there will be an EV ecosystem nationwide that will be nurtured. So if you have to run an EV vehicle, you need a lot of things, not just the cars. You need the charging infrastructure. You need it in every point across the country. So you need an ecosystem for that, which will be driven by the FAME scheme. But the scheme also faces a lot of challenges. Foremost challenge is the lack of charging infrastructure. We need it just like petrol pumps at every junction, which requires a lot of investment. Then we are import dependent on advanced battery components and technology. And we are still based on grids, because even if we are talking about EVs, majority of our power supply comes from thermal power plants. Then we are also dependent on mining of rare earth elements because that is being used by this sector. But the overall point is, if we are waiting for energy transition to take place for EVs to set in, then we will be in the back foot. Both energy transition and transport transition has to go hand in hand so that we are at the right place. So this article concludes with such a conclusion. You can use it for any answer on the EV paper. So that's the takeaway from today's Hindu. Thank you for listening.